Hello and welcome to World News, live from Warsaw here on TVP World. I'm your host, Marie Cato. Lithuania's Vilnius airport temporarily closed on Thursday due to weather balloons flying in its vicinity, according to a social media post by the airport. This is the fifth time the terminal has been closed to traffic over the past few weeks. Officials on Sunday halted flights after several objects identified as likely helium balloons used to smuggle cigarettes entered its airspace. In response to recent incursions earlier this week, Lithuania closed its land border with Belarus until at least December the 1st. Latvia's parliament has voted to quit an international treaty aimed at tackling violence against women. It comes after a conservative partner in the ruling coalition broke ranks to support the move in defiance of both the Prime Minister and President. Thousands protested in Riga on Wednesday against the withdrawal ahead of Thursday's debate. The Istanbul Convention was established by the Council of Europe and defines violence against women as a violation of human rights and addresses various forms of gender-based violence. Latvian opponents of the treaty argued it introduces a definition of gender that goes beyond biological sex. They said existing national laws are sufficient to address gender-based violence. One of three coalition parties, the Greens and Farmers Union, broke ranks and joined the opposition to push through the withdrawal by 56 votes in the 100-seat parliament. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said early on Friday that 2 people were killed following an overnight Russian drone and missile strikes on the Slovyansk Thermal Power Plant. In his address, Zelenskyy also revealed that intelligence reports indicated sanctions on Russia's oil industry were poised to have a significant impact.
A few hours ago, there was a strike on the Slovyansk Thermal Power Plant, a strike with Russian bombs. Unfortunately, 2 people were killed. My condolences. There are wounded, and this is being addressed. This is outright terror. Normal people don't wage war like this, and the world must respond appropriately to Russian warfare. There was a report today from the head of our foreign intelligence on the first details regarding American and European sanctions against Russian oil companies. This is quite tangible. Oil exports are the basis of Russian arrogance, and if sanctions are maintained and strengthened, Russia will lose at least $50 billion next year. This could be a strong argument for Russia to have a motive to end this war.
New details have emerged. Washington reportedly axed the planned summit in Budapest between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin after receiving a memo in which Moscow refused to move on its hardline ceasefire demands over the war in Ukraine. Earlier this month, Trump and Putin agreed during a phone call to meet for a second time for talks on how to end Russia's war against Ukraine. The Financial Times reports that the Trump administration cancelled the planned meeting after Moscow sent a memo to Washington, which prompted a call between Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. According to the paper, Rubio told Trump after the call that Moscow showed no willingness to negotiate. It may have warmed Washington and Beijing's trade ties, but a long-awaited meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping has seemingly failed to move the needle on Ukraine. In fact, exiled Russian opposition leader Garry Kasparov says China is banking on Russia and banking on Moscow's war. His comments are also supported by the EU's top diplomat Kaja Kallas. And as John Todd reports, a recent U.S. intelligence assessment warns Vladimir Putin is more committed than ever to winning the conflict.
Donald Trump whispers in President Xi's ear after their high-stakes talks in South Korea. It's not clear what he said. On his way home, Trump hailed their crunch sit-down as a success.
I thought it was an amazing meeting.
The US leader said a lot of decisions were made, but apart from some headline tariff reductions, it's also not clear whether he made any gains with Xi over Ukraine, in particular weakening Beijing's backing for Putin. Experts say, though, it's in China's interest for the conflict to continue.
China wants this war to continue. China is banking Russia. China is supporting Putin. China needs Putin. Because this war makes Russia weaker, but also makes the West weaker.
The EU's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, agrees. In an interview with The Economist, she revealed that her Chinese counterpart, Wang Yi, told her prolonging the conflict serves Beijing.
His message was that it's not in their interest that this war stops, because then America's attention will turn to China.
NBC News reports that a recent US intelligence assessment warns Putin is more committed than ever to winning the war, according to a senior congressional official. It's a view shared by exiled Russian opposition activist Garry Kasparov, who told TVP World that Putin's maximalist approach to the war has become his only way of keeping power in the country.
Donald Trump's, in my view, very generous offer to Putin illustrated my point that even Trump's offer, which was on the table, that, you know, from our point of view, if we look at this from rational analysis, was great. Putin turned it down twice because he cannot stop the war.
As Russia and China appear set for months more war, at the least, there's no solution in sight for Ukraine's hard-pressed citizens. This is John Todd for TVP World.
Around 100,000 young Ukrainian men have left the war-torn country since the government eased travel restrictions for those aged between 18 and 22. The largest influx has been registered in Germany and Poland as the demographic decline in their home country deteriorates with every year of Russia's full-scale invasion.
Just 2 months ago, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy allowed Ukrainian men aged between 18 and 22 to cross the national border. So far, a total of 99,000 young men have left the country, with as many as 1,600 crossings daily. The decision to ease restrictions came after 3 years of full-scale war in Ukraine, a time during which all men aged 18 to 60 were prohibited from leaving the country. This is how the Ukrainian president justified loosening the law in August.
This decision is aimed at protecting Ukrainian youth.
The travel ban has pushed many young men to leave Ukraine. With the frontline situation still tense, parents fearing mobilization and the war itself sent their son abroad before graduation, weakening their ties to the homeland.
That would be very bad for the country if a big part of those people who can rebuild Ukraine, who can create a new Ukraine, new wave of Ukraine in future after this cruel war, would accidentally die.
However, the decision has sparked some hostility against Ukrainians, particularly in Poland and Germany. The number of young Ukrainian men aged 18 to 22 entering Germany rose from 18 per week in mid-August to between 1,400 and 1,800 per week in October.
We have no interest in young Ukrainian men spending their time in Germany instead of defending their country.
But experts believe that many of these Ukrainians will return home and reshape the country.
To learn how Europe works, to learn how the law, how the mentality in Europe is, and then come back to the country and build it on a completely different way.
The full-scale war in Ukraine has dramatically changed the country's demographics. The population has declined by at least 10 million since 2022, dropping from over 40 million to around 30 million. And the war shows no sign of stopping. For TVP World, Anastasia Yanchenko.
Andrei Babish will not continue to provide Ukraine with military support, says Jacques Rupnik, research director at Sciences Po. In an exclusive interview with TVP World on the Record, Rupnik explained that Babish leans close to Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban's view on military aid for Ukraine, but will likely stop short of preventing other EU countries from providing aid.
I don't see Babish continuing this initiative. So he will not be obstructing others in the European Union from providing military aid to Ukraine. But I think my impression at the moment is that he will not be part of providing military aid to Ukraine. And in this sense, he leans closer to where the Slovak Prime Minister is or Viktor Orban.
Student protesters from all parts of Serbia are approaching Novi Sad to be there on November 1st to commemorate the anniversary of the railway station canopy collapse in the city, which resulted in 16 deaths. One of the groups from Novi Pazar in southwestern Serbia set off on a 420-kilometer journey. The convoy, which made a stop in Engia late Thursday, had thousands of protesters join them. The 2024 incident has prompted nationwide anti-government protests. Demonstrators are blaming the railway station roof collapse and the resulting casualties on government corruption and are seeking accountability. Oana Toiu, Romania's Minister of Foreign Affairs, told TVP World that NATO, and in particular its eastern flank, can trust Washington to keep the alliance safe. The minister's comments in an exclusive interview came after the US announced it would pull 700 soldiers from its 1,700-strong force in the country.
First of all, it's a common responsibility, not just a Washington responsibility, and we need to keep each other safe within NATO, but also we need to be sure we have the proper defense and deterrence systems also nationally. For example, the first defensive alliance that Romania has ever signed is with Poland more than 100 years ago, just to give an example on the continent. In what is concerning the recent decision of US, in that sense, obviously, Romania would have wanted, as well as the entire European Union, I would assume, that we have a steady presence of US or an increase. But the current decision, which is to reassess the number of troops they have in Europe, specifically the brigade that had exercises in Romania, Hungary, and Slovakia, that is currently in Germany, coming back to the United States, is a decision that does not affect the long-term and short-term defense and deterrence capacity that we have on the eastern flank, because it is a pre-prepared decision.
Prince Andrew is about to leave his Windsor home and be stripped of his royal titles. The process to remove Prince Andrew's honours was initiated by King Charles. From now on, the King's brother will be known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. The decision was made amid the circulating assertions of Andrew's friendship with the late child sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, as well as sexual assault allegations against him by one of Epstein's victims. In her memoir published days ago, the late Virginia Giuffre, who died by suicide, claimed Prince Andrew, quote, believed that having sex with her was his birthright, reports The Guardian. Prince Andrew adamantly denies accusations that he had sexual relations with Giuffre when she was 17 and had settled the civil lawsuit with her in 2022 for an alleged sum of £12 million. The King's brother gave up his other royal titles earlier in October, including the Duke of York. The world's largest cargo sailboat completed its maiden transatlantic voyage on Thursday, despite sustaining damage to its aft sail during the crossing. The 136-metre-long neoliner Origin is equipped with 2 semi-rigid sails and is designed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 80 to 90% compared to traditional diesel-powered cargo ships, which account for approximately 3% of global greenhouse gas emissions.
We need to get in equilibrium with our ecosystem. But at the same time, we must maintain industrial capacities because we are more numerous on the Earth and we have a modern life that we need to maintain. So in our sector, which is maritime shipping, we try to find a good compromise and to prove that it is possible to get efficiently transportation in a modern way in standardized cargoes. Wind propulsion is very interesting for that because it is free energy available everywhere, not always at the same amount, of course, but it is predictable and it is not impacting anywhere else. You are not relying on a very large infrastructure ashore to prepare carbon-free fuel, for example. You are more independent. So it's very interesting for small to mid-scale vessels, and we intend to prove it with this first pilot vessel.
And that's all for World News at this hour. Thanks so much for being with us, and we'll see you very soon. Goodbye.